Hey everybody, this is Mike with Freearming Photography, and in this video I'm going to start something new where I talk about the story behind the shot. I take one of my favorite images that has an interesting story behind it, I run through the story, how I processed it, things like that, things I would have done differently, things I like about it, don't like, and kind of give you a full gist of the history of that shot. And before we get started, I just want to remind you I do offer private photography workshops in both Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks. If that's something you're interested in, check out the link in the description for more info on that. And without further ado, let's jump in. So this is one of my favorite shots of all time. It's probably my biggest seller in terms of stock or print. And it's just an all around, like, really great shot that I was really happy with. And it actually comes from early on in my photography career. I'd only had my camera for a few years at that point. But the story is, I was driving through Yellowstone National Park. It was only my first summer in the area. This was back in 2009, so I hadn't even been in the area a full year yet. Wolves were very present in Lamar Valley, much more so than today, because since the hunts have started on them, they were taken off the endangered species list in 2012 so that hunting could be done more on them. And ever since then, they've been a little more skittish of the road. There's a few exceptions here and there, but they were much more approachable. I don't want to say approachable, that's not the right word, but they were much more accessible back then before they were taken off the endangered species list. And so this comes from that time period. And I was just happy to explore the area. I'd heard about the Beartooth Highway. I was on my way up there, passing through the Lamar Valley, going out the northeast entrance, and I noticed a big crowd. They were watching a wolf, and I stopped at the hitching post, which is a popular spot, and I asked what was going on. They said, oh, there was a wolf, but it went over the hills. It might be over at the next parking lot. So I got in. I just wanted to see if it was going that way. I stopped at the next parking lot, and they said, no, it hasn't come this way. We think it might be coming out of the other one. I was the only one bouncing back and forth. I just wanted to see it. And so I drove back to the hitching post. It's only about a half-mile drive or so, maybe a little bit more. I got there and they said, yeah, it's not coming out. It's just hiding away somewhere. So I thought, well, I wanted to see the Beartooth Highway. I didn't want to stick around looking for wolves, as exciting as it might be. So I started on my way up toward the Beartooth Highway, and in between the two parking lots, that's when this wolf just popped out right along the road. Beautiful fog lifting up from the mountains in the distance. Perfect composition, just an ideal setting. And it really just posed about as perfectly as it could for me. And I was thrilled with it, and it got a lot of attention for that reason. And it still gets published today. It came out beautifully. That is a story behind it. I also like to joke sometimes that there's two stories. The other story is that I hiked 10 miles following wolf tracks, and finally, after getting dehydrated and hungry and running out of energy, that's when this wolf popped up out in the middle of the wilderness. But yeah, there's one real story. So in terms of processing, I really didn't want to change that much. This was an ideal image, and I didn't want to alter it all that much from its original state. So I kept the processing pretty minimal, just brought out a lot of the greens. They were pretty strong. Kind of threw in a little bit of contrast on the fur, but nothing really too over ambitious. I didn't want to push it too far. I just wanted to let the image speak for itself, which it does very well. So there wasn't a whole lot done. There was one blade of grass. You could probably see it right here. It's right in front of the wolf. In terms of getting rid of things from an image, that's about as far as I'm going to go. There's, maybe a stray blade of grass. It's distracting. I might get rid of that, but I'm not going to do much more. I'm not going to recompose the image or anything. I'm not going to remove larger pieces of nature like a tree or a bush or something like that. I just want to remove a distracting element like a twig or a piece of grass or something like that. That's about as far as I go. And really, the only thing that I don't like about this image is the lens I was using. Like I said, this was still really early on in my photography career. I'd only had my camera for a few years at that point, so my gear was not very nice. I had a relatively cheap 70 to 300 Canon lens, so what you can see is a little bit of the distortion and the fringing that a lens like that would cause. You can see it in some of these blades of grass around the foreground, but overall it's really not that bad. It's more something for technical viewers to take notice of, but even then it's not really that big of a fault. So that just goes to show you, if you're starting out or you have lower end gear, don't get discouraged. It's all about the shot. It's all more has to do with, how you're composing and things like that versus the actual technical gear. And then in terms of the settings, I'm actually pretty happy with them. This is on an old Canon 5D, the original one, so I didn't want to push the ISO up too high. I kept it at 500, and that gave me 1/320th of a second at f8. And f8 worked to preserve the whole, or at least the bulk of the body of the wolf, but also separate it from the background. And the shutter speed was quick enough just because it wasn't really doing anything, and it really captured all the beauty of the landscape as well, really effectively. If I could go back and do it again, I would just bring a better lens. I might go down in aperture a little bit just to pop it out a little bit more, but at the same time, I think it just really works well. So not really a whole lot that I would change in this case. So really happy with this image and hope you enjoy it too. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comments below. Please like and subscribe for more like this. And if you want to check out information about those workshops, just look down in the description below. And thanks for watching. Happy trails.